We are the first cathedrals of the industrial age, forged in steel, blackened by the soot of coal, filled by the thunderous roar of pounding locomotives. We are the last memory of the era of mechanics and the old progress. And these are our stories.
Right from the very beginning, I was writing railway history. As the last monumental structure built in the industrial age during the railway mania. Still today, the prime example of the Midland Railway and one of London's 9 main stations. In the beginning, the Midland Railway Company was tolerated on foreign tracks. Its trains reached London via Euston Station and King's Cross, until I was created, St Pancras Station, chosen for the glory of England's richest railway company. On the 1st of October 1868, the first express train from London to Leicester left my vitreous railway hall. This journey was considered the longest train ride in the world, 156 kilometers without a single stop. I was a construction of superlatives. At the back, door to the world. In the middle, cathedral. And at the front, a palace.
This is a customer announcement. Please ensure that you keep your luggage on board.
Sir George Gilbert Scott, architect of churches and cathedrals, designed me as a railway palace constructed out of innumerable turrets, spires and pinnacles, with materials of the Midlands, sandstone, red and grey granite and bricks, the shapeable dream material of the Victorian era. My crowning glory, still widely visible to this day, the Midland Grand Hotel. Innovations like revolving doors and levitating rooms, meaning elevators, made people gasp in astonishment. Even a luxurious restaurant full of Victorian splendour was available for the hungry travellers. My palace of travel needs a huge number of personnel. A sheer army of servants was needed for all the chamber pots, tubs and cuspidors before you could rest in one of my 300 rooms. Every single one of them equipped with its own fireplace. Right in the middle of it, the grand staircase, still today as breathtaking as in 1873 when Queen Victoria inaugurated the hotel. I am a place of magic, and the young Rosie Brigham, who was new in town, fell under my spell.
St Pancras Station fascinates me because it is this beautiful mishmash and split between intricate gothic detail, sort of harking back to an almost sort of fairy tale time, and the industrial power and just the might of the Industrial Revolution. When I came here the first time, I looked up and I saw all of these heraldic images along the columns at the top. When the hotel was first opened, people who were coming in for the first time, they would have been aware of this imagery and know what it means, and it would just have given an extra dimension. I love the lady in smoking room.
Good afternoon.
One of my favourite things is that it was actually originally meant to be a mixed-sex smoking room. It was meant to be the first of its type, so that both ladies and gentlemen could smoke together.
Box. There's your matchbox. You just strike it.
But pretty soon, the ladies didn't want the gentlemen to see them smoking, so they kicked them out, essentially, and it became a ladies-only smoking room. It was sort of one of the first times that they would be allowed to travel by themselves, and I think that would be incredibly liberating, because all of a sudden, like, it's like the world's your oyster. The staircase in the Midland Hotel is fascinating. As you walk up it, it actually gets narrower. And that is because as you rise to the top of the building, that will be where the maids live. So it's wide at the bottom so that the ladies with their large skirts can pass, and it gives enough space for those ridiculous cage-like crinolines, which are sometimes, you know, meters in diameter. The ladies' fashion probably did have an influence on the architecture of the hotel. I think I could make a very good Victorian lady if I was transported back to 1890s, only if I was an upper class.
Silently and quietly, standing between my platforms, Sir John Betjeman, appointed Poet Laureate to the Queen, fanatic of railways and my saviour. In the 1960s, he saved me from deconstruction, just like my single-span roof designed by William Henry Barlow, 689 feet long and 240 feet wide, made of cast iron and glass. At the time, unique in the world. Nearby St Pancras Gardens, the remains of an old cemetery. I was erected on a big part of its former ground. The gravestones under the hardy tree are a reminder of the disreputable works exercised here. Over a whole year, 88,000 bodies were snatched from their graves. Malodor and irreverence accompanied my creation. It was a dramatic experience for the 25-year-old architect Thomas Hardy. He gave up his profession and turned his back on London forever. William Jones was also buried here, schoolmaster and tormentor of the young Charles Dickens. His cruel, unfair and agonizing nature gave endless inspiration for the future books of the young author.
I've always known since I was very small that I was related to Charles Dickens, that he was my great-great-great-grandfather. But I didn't know for some time that everybody else knew who he was. I hadn't realised quite how famous he was. And I remember one of my teachers talking about him at school, and I was thinking, how does she know about him? You know, he's in my family. He was really, to me, known as the man who wrote Oliver. I was amazed by the width of his work, a number of different ideas that he got in there, the way he embraced social conditions of the time. And I'd had no idea of just how influential he'd been in changing some of the bad things in his society.
Lucinda Hawksley, great-great-great-granddaughter of the writer, couldn't elude from the artistic family heritage. Today, she also works as a writer and is a passionate Dickens expert.
When Charles Dickens was 18 years old, the very first steam train was created. And he was always a big fan of the railways until in 1865, he was on a train that was involved in a very terrible train crash. So this was the Staplehurst crash, and for many years it was one of the worst train crashes in British history. Charles Dickens and his travelling companions survived, but many people did not survive, and there were also far more people who were badly injured. And this was something that scarred Dickens for life. So exactly 5 years to the day after the Staplehurst rail crash, Charles Dickens died. It was the anniversary of the rail crash. When Charles Dickens was involved in the train crash at Staplehurst in Kent, he was really concerned about the story getting into the newspapers. And this is because he was travelling with his mistress and her mother. A few years before the rail crash, he had separated from his wife, and he was in a clandestine or secret relationship with his mistress. He was also one of the heroes because after he got out of the carriage and he helped his companions out of the carriage, he was then rushing around helping other people, and he was physically pulling dead or dying people from the train and trying to save them. It was a very famous illustration of him, which was made by somebody who had heard that Charles Dickens had gone to the stream, filled his top hat with water, and brought it back to wash the wounds of those people who'd been injured or giving it to them to drink. As well as saving people in the train crash, Charles Dickens went back to the carriage that he had been in to save his precious manuscript. So this was a really, really important thing that he felt he couldn't let his manuscript go.
From the very beginning, I had to stand my ground in the middle of my numerous Londoner siblings, above all towards King's Cross and Victoria Station. Whilst I was servicing the rich Midlands, Victoria Station was crucial for the South and her connection to the continent. Furthermore, it was the key train station to reach Crystal Palace, emblem and remains of the first World Exhibition of 1851. Prince Albert became benefactor and patron of the Great Exhibition, and Queen Victoria gave it her royal blessing by opening the glittering World Fair. For decades, I was in bitter competition with my older brother, King's Cross. He was named after the statue of King George IV, which had to be displaced when he was constructed. 1852, at the day of his opening, he was England's largest train station. He even went down in film history as the magical train station. Young wizards and witches departed from platform 9 3/4 in the direction of Hogwarts. King's Cross was a symbol of the Great Northern Lines and was ever since the train station of kings. Queen Victoria and her royal family took his service for travelling to their noble home, Balmoral Castle. From this point, the famous Flying Scotsman used to travel north, and sometimes still does today. Stephen Lober spent his childhood between the platforms of King's Cross, son of a well-rooted railway family.
My connection with King's Cross is the fact is that my father worked there for many years. I sort of started on there as a junior railman. But it also was a playground for a kid. But you couldn't be too silly. You had to respect the station and, you know, but yeah, played around a bit, you know, mucked about sometimes, caused a bit of mischief. I wasn't born in the steam era, as you see in the steam trains working today. But it's a time that's fascinating me, and because my dad worked on the steam locomotives. They're human beings, you know, there's nothing you can describe it. They're just a fantastic working machine. Basically, a locomotive is always considered as a she. If they play up, they always consider that being temperamental, being awkward. I hope I'm not putting my foot in this, but, you know, that's the reason why. It's always a she. The steam locomotive, if it plays up, goes wrong, or it shows you it doesn't approve that you're doing something wrong by operating it, will always tell you, like a lady, that they do not like it. There you go. How's that? When I look at, I'll just say my old dad's lamp, basically it brings back some sadly happy memories for me.
Like one of the British railway traditions that were established right in the beginning of the age of railway. The train driver's breakfast, important morning ritual in the driver's cabin. With a minimum of space and means, typical British enjoyment.
my dad was working as a fireman to his driver, and this was during and after, just after the war, I think, because rationing was still very much, you know, in place. So what they do is they get the shovel, clean it, and put their bacon and eggs on the shovel, then put it in the fire hole door and cook it. Well, my dad one day was off the loco doing something, and his driver had put his food on the shovel in the fire hole door. And then suddenly my dad jumps on and opens what they call the blower. And that gives a little bit of a draft into the firebox to prevent the fires coming out. Well, this took the bacon and eggs off the shovel, through the tubes and up the chimney. My dad had a very special encounter one particular day. He was a sleeping car attendant at the time. One of his duties was he had to take hot teas to the passengers in the morning.
Tea. On this.
Well, he was doing this, and this young kiddie was running about, you know, in the corridor, getting under his feet.
Any more?
Young man, he said, please get out the way because I'll spill hot tea over you. So the young chap stopped and went into his berth. My dad carried on doing his duty. He comes out with some more hot teas, he said. Well, this young lad's he's running up and down. So he said, look, I've told you once. And he just tapped him on the bum. He said, look, just get out the way.
Your tea?
So this young kid, he looked a bit startled and then shot into the side of into his berth. As my dad was clearing up later on, he said, a chap came down to him. He said, you know that young lad you sort of tapped on the backside? He said, yes. He said, well, you do know he's a royal prince. He said, I think you said you've just tapped Prince Andrew's backside. So anyway, but the young lad found it exceptionally amusing and absolutely hilarious. So that's the encounter where my dad was a little bit of an encounter with royalty.
Here's Master of the Birds, Wayne Parson. His passion lies in the elegant flight of hawks and the connection to wild animals, like Lizzie. She already posed alongside Harry Potter in front of the camera. Trained especially in order to keep my departure hall free from pigeons.
When I let the hawk fly in St Pancras Station and seeing the bird fly free, it gives me a good feeling. You've trained the hawk to fly, not to kill the pigeons, but just to sort of move the pigeons on. I do get worried of birds flying in St Pancras because anything can happen on a split second. Like a pigeon might fly in, the hawk might be up somewhere high in the rafter, and it might just come down and catch the pigeon. There's always that chance. It is a bit of a dangerous place as well because the hawk could take the pigeon onto one of the tracks, one of the railway lines as well. So, and then we've got to gain access to get the hawk back before a train comes in. That's never happened. When you're flying a hawk around and people do come and talk to you, they say, "Oh, we've never seen a hawk that close before. It looks so magnificent." So the birds are celebrities. Because if I was walking there and started to talk to someone with no birds, they'd just give me the time of the day and that'd be it.
As a relic of the age of steam and mechanics, from the Victorian age made of iron, I'm now standing here. And despite all the modernizations, I'm still inviting you to dream. Fuel beloved longings when my locomotives, blackened with soot, were stomping and puffing in order to discover the world.